Coming to paperback and e-readers, the steam season of The Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Season of The Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Historical couples in crisis. Now, the first person I'm going to be talking about in this historical couples in crisis video is John Wayne Bobbitt. Now, John Wayne Bobbitt is infamously known in the 1990s for being the man who wound up getting his penis cut off by his wife, who was extremely enraged about years of domestic violence and rapes that John Wayne Bobbitt inflicted on her. Now, John Wayne Bobbitt, before he was a part of this very infamous event that took place in 1993, was a man in crisis, and I would say he was a man in crisis ever since he was born into a single mother household. Now, John Wayne Bobbitt was born into a single mother household and never knew his father, and as he never knew his father, his mother was a drug addict, and as his mother basically became overwhelmed by addiction, she was not capable of taking care of John Wayne Bobbitt or his brothers, and as a result, John Wayne Bobbitt wound up being taken away from his mother and had to go live with an aunt. And I believe that was the start of John Wayne Bobbitt further heading down the road to being a man in crisis who was basically simmering and boiling in anger regarding the way his mother wound up being taken away from him and by drugs and wound up being abandoned by his mother. And as he was living in that aunt's house, he stopped living in the real world, but started to live in a place that I find many beta males live in called the secret world. Now, this secret world is a rose-colored reality that looks and feels like our world, but everything is completely distorted, and that's how John Wayne Bobbitt's perception of reality became twisted. I believe it started to be twisted when he wound up having this trauma of growing up in that single mother household with a drug-addicted mother, then experiencing the trauma of being taken away from that mother, and sadly, because there was never any father in his life, he was on the road to being a man in crisis, even though he was in a home with an aunt who was already married and had her own sons. But because he was in this home, even though he was around men and other boys, he really did not know how to function as a man, because sadly there was no father there to teach him male life skills or male survival skills or skills such as critical thinking. Sadly, because John Wayne Bobbitt didn't get those foundations in his early age, even though he was in that home, he basically had become disconnected and detached as related to being in the presence of other people. And this is what led to him, possibly as I see it, having a road to being this man in crisis, basically, again, in the secret world as related to his natural masculinity and also his natural sexuality. Now, this really would not be seen until later on as related to John Wayne Bobbitt. Now, John Wayne Bobbitt tried to go out here and tried to learn how to be a man by going out to the Marines. Now, he did 4 years in the U.S. Marines and was trying to learn things about manhood, but sadly, because of the dysfunctional foundation he had, he basically wound up not being a functional man, and that was shown when he went to one of these military mixers and met Lorena Gallo. Now, as John Wayne Bobbitt met Lorena Gallo, he basically was not in a position where he was ready to be a man and be a leader and a head. No, he was basically a simp, and because he was a simp, he basically was looking to be led by this woman, a woman who basically was looking not to be a helpmeet, but to help herself to the resources of an American man. And Lorena thought that because John was in the military, she would be able to help herself to his resources and be able to live the American dream that she saw in many American television shows, and thought that John Wayne Bobbitt would go out here and be able to provide her with the high life that she saw on many soap operas and other movies and programs. Now, Lorena Gallo basically thought she was going to again live her American dream by getting involved with John Wayne Bobbitt, and she did not know about John Wayne Bobbitt's extremely dysfunctional background. No, she thought that because he was a man in the military, he would be a very stable man. But what she didn't know is that a lot of men in crisis go into the military, and they go into the military to try to shape themselves up to become better men. But sadly, what happens to these men is that they wind up becoming even more dysfunctional men in crisis once they get out of uniform. And that's what happened with John Wayne Bobbitt. He wound up marrying Lorena Bobbitt after a whirlwind romance, and that whirlwind romance basically happened because he was a simp who really did not understand how relationships work between men and women. And since he never understood about how relationships work between men and women, or the role of a man in God's order, this is why this entire marriage did not come together to create an order to serve God, but created chaos in both of their lives. Chaos in both of their lives because outside of John Wayne Bobbitt possibly, again, just seeing this woman as the first one to pay attention to him, that was his motivation, and Lorena looking for a payday. What happened was this entire relationship started to deteriorate the minute John Wayne Bobbitt wound up leaving the Marines and winding up in the real world. Now, as John Wayne Bobbitt entered into the real world, he wound up going back on the road to becoming a man in crisis, because without the structure and order of the military, John Wayne Bobbitt, basically his life became complete chaos. And as his life became complete chaos, because he did not have that foundation in male life skills or male survival skills to do things like be able to hold and keep a job or navigate through his emotions, what happened is John Wayne Bobbitt basically wound up in a life situation where instead of him taking the lead in the relationship, Lorena had to take the lead in the relationship and basically be like the mommy to John Wayne Bobbitt, again paying the bills for this guy as he basically struggled to be able to make a living, not being able to keep jobs, and that basically made Lorena lose respect for John Wayne Bobbitt and further lose respect for him as he went from being a husband that she thought would be the ideal to showing how he was really caught up in sexual deviancy and caught up in what I believe to be sexual deviancy, again, due to the dysfunctional way he was raised as related to the trauma from losing his mother and basically not really being comfortable with his own natural masculinity and his natural sexuality. And because he was uncomfortable with his natural masculinity and natural sexuality, this is where he basically was, I believe, exploring sex in the secret world based on the reports of how Lorena says he treated her. Now, according to Lorena Bobbitt, in interviews I saw in 2020, basically Lorena Bobbitt says that John Wayne Bobbitt basically wanted sex in a very deviant way, and that he believed in, again, being able to participate in raping his own wife, and again, looking to assault his own wife. And again, this is quite disturbing because this is the type of behavior that beta males participate in when they have deep-seated anger regarding women, and deep-seated anger regarding women where they're looking to get power as related to the relationship. And I believe with the case of John Wayne Bobbitt, he wanted to get power in this relationship because he felt powerless as a man due to the fact that his mother could not meet his needs, and because his mother could not meet his needs, and he wound up abandoned and again by his mother in his eyes, he wanted to again get power over a woman. And that's what I believe why he made sex to be an act where he looked to humiliate his wife instead of sharing relations with a woman and becoming closer to her emotionally and spiritually. No, John Wayne Bobbitt did not want to become closer to a woman. He expressed anger towards his wife that he basically had, I believe, at his mother. And as he expressed this anger at his wife, he basically was again upset because he did not have that power as a man that he wanted to get in the military, in the real world, because he could not keep jobs, he could not lead or take care of himself. So this compounded his anger, and he took his anger out at his wife Lorena, who was able to go out here and do the things he wanted to do as a man. And basically, he was so angry and frustrated about his life, and that's why he was again participating in the domestic and sexual violence against his wife, looking to again humiliate her because he was angry about feeling powerless as a man, feeling powerless in his place as a man, and that's why he again participated in this violence, which basically was him again exploding in rage at his wife, regarding his issues with his mother, issues he basically had again for a long time. And all of this basically led to Lorena feeling, again, the brunt of this abuse, because she was not a person to John Wayne Bobbitt. No, when it came to John Wayne Bobbitt, Lorena Bobbitt was not a person. No, Lorena Bobbitt basically was an object for him to be able to sate his deviant ideas about humiliating women, and basically a piece of property, because in the eyes of a beta male, a woman is not a person that they have feelings for or care about. No, they're an object to them, and that basically was shown by the way he again violently abused Lorena, and everything came to a head one night. It came to a head one night in 1993 when John Wayne Bobbitt came home drunk, and as he came home drunk, he allegedly forced himself on his wife, and after he forced himself on his wife this one time, this is where Lorena Bobbitt wound up losing it, and this is where she decided to take a Ginsu knife and slice off his member, and then drove around with his member, throwing it in a lot near a 7-Eleven, and then this is where, again, John Wayne Bobbitt basically, again, had this whole situation. They contacted the police, and then they eventually found his member, reattached it in surgery after 9 hours of surgery, and then there was, Lorena Bobbitt was arrested, and then we got the story of the century. We got the story of the century as related to this case, and this case did go to trial, and Lorena did get acquitted based on insanity and was put in a mental hospital for 5 weeks. But the story went on, and again the story went on, and John Wayne Bobbitt, after again divorcing Lorena Bobbitt, now Lorena Bobbitt further talks about how John Wayne Bobbitt again further abused her by making her have an abortion. I'll go into that in her section of the story. But John Wayne Bobbitt, after divorcing Lorena Bobbitt, a Catholic woman who did not like divorce, basically, again, after he divorced her, he wound up, again, starring in pornographic movies, but still having domestic violence issues with other women he had gotten involved with, and sadly, further continued the cycle because he wound up having a son with one woman. But the big problem with John Wayne Bobbitt was he basically, again, did not have a good foundation in being a man, and it didn't matter whether he was with Lorena or any other woman. The problem always was rooted with John Wayne Bobbitt being a man in crisis because he came from a dysfunctional single mother, never was taught what he needed to know on how to be a man, even with a term in the military, could not learn what he needed to be a man, because what a boy needs to be a man basically comes from a father, and because John Wayne Bobbitt didn't have a father in his life at an early age, it put him on the road to being a man in crisis who was, again, on the road to being in a place called the secret world, a man caught up in sexual deviancy, again, looking to humiliate the woman who was supposed to be his wife instead of sharing love with her, a man who was so cruel that he insisted that his wife have an abortion against her own religious beliefs. Again, this is who John Wayne Bobbitt was, and even after he left Lorena, he continued to have domestic violence incidents with other women, and again, had another son somewhere, according to one report, and again, that son wound up possibly being a man in crisis because John Wayne Bobbitt was incapable of taking care of himself as a man, and sadly, what happened with John Wayne Bobbitt is he shows what happens when a boy doesn't have a father and then goes out and gets involved with people. He creates a crisis for everyone and creates chaos all around. Creates chaos all around because he's grown up like a stalk, like a child of the corn. And this child of the corn basically, again, grows up and causes chaos wherever he goes because he does not know how to be a man, but all he knows how to do is be a man in crisis. And that's what John Wayne Bobbitt still is today at 58 years old, still in crisis, still in chaos, because he doesn't know, he never knew how to be a man. And the sad thing about this whole incident is that he's still a man in crisis. Now, the second person I'm going to be talking about in this historical couples in crisis video is John Wayne Bobbitt's ex-wife, Lorena Bobbitt. Now, Lorena Bobbitt is infamously known for cutting off her husband John's penis with a kitchen knife while he was asleep after he allegedly raped her, and this whole event became one of the major events of the early 90s. However, before Lorena Bobbitt ever got involved with John Bobbitt, she was on the road to becoming a woman in crisis due to all of the misinformed ideas that she had about America that framed her perception of the American dream. Now, Lorena Gallo basically had all sorts of ideas of living a lavish lifestyle when she looked to come to America, because as she was living in Ecuador, she watched a lot of American movies, TV shows, and soap operas, and as she was watching this media, she had the idea that if she came to America, she would be able to live the American dream, and basically came to America on a student visa and was attending a community college, and was not really attending a community college to get an education, but was attending this college to basically get the ultimate American dream in finding a rich white man who would be the one who would sweep her off her feet and allow her to be taken to live this lavish lifestyle, similar to the fairy tale many women have in their minds. And sadly, this whole idea is what leads to many women going from being women to women in crisis. And this is what happened to Lorena Gallo. She was caught up in the rose-colored reality that was presented by Madison Avenue and Hollywood regarding what America was like, and was not really living in the real world to see the real people or see what the real America looked like. Now, Lorena Gallo, as she was going to college on this student visa, was on the student visa and looking to try to find a way to achieve her American dream and find a way to stay in the country. And that's where she went to one of these military mixers looking for that military white man that would allow her to achieve her American dream of living that lavish lifestyle. And she thought that because John Wayne Bobbitt was a Marine, he basically would be a man who would be a leader, a protector, and a provider, like was established by God under her Catholic religion. She basically then transposed these ideas onto this white man because she basically believed in white supremacy more than God. And because she believed in white supremacy more than God, she fell in love with the idea of this white man and projected this onto John Wayne Bobbitt, because she did not see him as a man, but basically deified him because of the ideas that he represented. And this was what Lorena Bobbitt really was in love with, as she was caught up in her hypergamy. She was not in love with John Wayne Bobbitt, but she was in love with the idea of America that he represented, in him being a military man, and she thought he would be able to provide her with the economic security that she desired. She thought he would be able to help her achieve her American dream. Unfortunately, as she got caught up in her feelings about this white man and him being in uniform, what she did not see was that the content of John Wayne Bobbitt's character. No, she was so caught up in the fantasy about John Wayne Bobbitt, she couldn't see that the real man standing in front of her was a man in crisis, and a man in crisis who basically came to the military in order to find that discipline and structure. Unfortunately, she didn't see what this man was because of what he was representing. And again, that's what happens to a lot of women who have been indoctrinated by American media. They don't really see the man that's standing in front of them until much later on. And basically, Lorena was caught up in her fantasies. And again, as she thought that this man would be a knight in shining armor, because she saw that her visa was about to expire, and John basically married her just to keep her in the country, not as a woman that he loved, but see her as an object as related to him possessing, an object he could possess to be able to enjoy his deviant sexual ideas regarding sex as related to things. And he really wasn't interested in, again, being with her as a person. No, he just basically saw her as, again, an object, again, that he could abuse and participate in his alleged deviant sexual fantasies of looking to, again, grape and humiliate a woman. Grape and humiliate a woman that he would physically and emotionally abuse. Physically and emotionally abused because of his deep-seated issues as related to the abandonment he suffered at the hands of his single mother, who was not able to take care of him due to her addiction issues. And that left John Wayne Bobbitt simmering and boiling in anger, and he took this anger out on his wife, and again took it out on his wife because he didn't see his wife as a person that he loved. No, he saw her as property, and as he saw her as property, he saw her as somebody he was going to again get his revenge on his mother by humiliating this woman by breaking her down through these, again, very deviant sexual acts, again, of raping his own wife. And as Lorena thought she was going to live her American dream, she wound up living in trauma with John Wayne Bobbitt, as he was, instead of giving her the American dream, gave her a nightmare, because after he wound up leaving the military, he was not the one who was the head of this relationship in any way, shape, or form. He did not protect or provide for her. No, Lorena went out here and was out here working at a nail salon, and again struggling to do things, and again was still caught up in her ambitions to the point where she was embezzling money to maintain this lifestyle that she thought John would be able to provide for her, but he was not able to, because he was not able to hold a job. And since he wasn't able to hold a job, this further made him angry and made him want to again go out here and get power by humiliating Lorena. And as he humiliated Lorena, he basically again was continuing to physically abuse her to the point where once Lorena got pregnant, he basically told her that she needed to have an abortion. And after telling Lorena that she needed to have an abortion, he made her have this abortion, going against her religious beliefs. And I believe that had a major impact on Lorena as related to being a woman whose life again became crisis, because she thought she was going to get into a marriage and this man would basically allow her to live her dreams, but he turned her life into a nightmare where he participated in, again, sexual deviancy by raping her, and then further told her to have an abortion, and then continued to have infidelities on his wife, and again did so many cruel things. And then eventually, after he again participated in these acts, one night he came home drunk, and again as he came home drunk, he then again told his wife he was going to divorce her, then allegedly wound up graping her, and then after graping her, he then again fell asleep. And this is where Lorena again looked to finally get the ultimate revenge, because he felt that he had basically again humiliated her in the ultimate fashion by not only again graping her and again destroying their whole bond as related to marriage, also going out here and making her have an abortion, going against her religious beliefs, and then further again looking to divorce her, again further going against her religious beliefs, making her feel completely worthless. And this is where Lorena Bobbitt wound up snapping to the point where she basically wound up taking out this Ginsu knife and then giving his private part a slice. This was her taking power away from John Wayne Bobbitt, taking power away because this man had been using his penis as a weapon, and using his penis as a weapon, according to her, to break her down and take away her power. And she took this weapon away from John Wayne Bobbitt and drove around with this man's penis, and then eventually threw it into a field on the roadside of Maplewood Drive. And this is where people found John Wayne Bobbitt's penis, and then wound up washing it with antiseptic and packing it in saline ice, eventually reattaching it to John Wayne Bobbitt. And then Lorena basically went on trial for this crime, was eventually, again, declared not guilty due to temporary insanity from the years of abuse that she suffered from John Wayne Bobbitt, and then eventually wound up divorcing John Wayne Bobbitt because of the abuse that she suffered from this sociopathic man, a man who threatened to find her whether they were divorced or separated, and again participate in his deviant idea of sex. And again, this deviant idea of sex that John Wayne Bobbitt had, again, basically was the reason why Lorena was motivated to sever his penis, because he did not, want to have sex with women, to connect with women and bond with women. He wanted to break down and humiliate women, and he basically turned Lorena Gallo into a woman in crisis, because what she thought she was going to do was again be able to find her dream man. And as she thought she was going to be able to find a dream man, what she found was a nightmare with John Wayne Bobbitt, and that basically led to her again being a woman in crisis, who basically again continued to have issues even after the divorce, because she was charged with assault for punching her mother as they watched television, and again still, I believe, would have mental health issues from all of the trauma that she suffered, have all this trauma. Again, she's a woman who is an ongoing woman in crisis, and a woman who desperately, again, still, I would need help. And what was really disturbing is that they had her appear on a talk show, The Insider, in 2009 with John Wayne Bobbitt. And the whole thing is, he was talking about how he still loved her, but he doesn't even know how to love anyone at all, because he had serious issues from his childhood that led to him being a man in crisis. And this man in crisis, as he got involved with this woman, wound up becoming a woman in crisis. And again, this was a major event as related to America and American infamy, which was really sad, again, because it shows, again, a complete breakdown of this couple. Again, neither one really knew how to function. You had John Wayne Bobbitt, who did not know how to be a man. You had Lorena, who was basically misinformed as related to how relationships worked, and again got involved with the wrong man. But Lorena basically wound up becoming a woman in crisis because she did not have a real perception of men or reality perception of what American men are like. And in both cases, neither of these people should have been together, because they had a whole lot to work on themselves and still need to work on themselves, because right now, even though they are separated, John and Lorena Bobbitt are still both men and women in crisis. Now, if you want to learn how to identify the behavior of a beta male and how dangerous they are, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to learn what leads to many women becoming deeply troubled and women in crisis like Lorena Bobbitt, or now Lorena Gallo, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also pick up The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.